Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer, food maker, or artisan selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast.
I'm Kat Fields-White.
And I'm Bridget Myers. We're longtime farmers market managers, educators, and consultants. Get ready to catch up on all things farmers market pros with us. We're talking about surviving and thriving in this season of the Tent Talk series. And today we're talking with Dana DePrima of the For Farmers movement about supporting the people who feed us all, small farmers.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by Square, helping small farmers, food makers, crafters, and market managers increase their incomes by making it easy to process credit and debit card sales on the street and in the tents. We use Square ourselves for selling shopping bags and t-shirts at our market info booths and for invoicing farmers and vendors online for space fees. The income you generate appears promptly in your bank account without spending time or money on end-of-day closeouts. Square's user-friendly system makes it easy for our farmers and vendors to track inventory and payroll and generate clear reports. For more information on reducing stress and increasing your income with Square, click their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Welcome back to Tent Talk, everybody. Today we're talking with Dana DePrima, the founder of the For Farmers movement, about supporting small farmers, one donation, one story, one simple direct grant at a time. Dana is a corporate executive turned small farmer, podcast host, and community advocate who isn't about to wait for Congress or philanthropists or anyone else to turn the tide. Instead, she's jumped in to put eaters in touch with producers and make it easy to support the people who feed us all. Welcome to Tent Talk, Dana.
Thank you so much. I feel like my work is done. You've done an excellent job introducing me. Thank you.
It was great to talk to you. Goodbye.
Yeah, we're done.
We're all set. Everyone get what she does? Okay. No. We have so many questions and we are so excited to talk to you and kind of share what you do with all of our listeners. So lots to cover. But first, if you would just want to tell us a little bit about like your personal and professional background so people can get to know you a little bit.
I always have felt like my professional background was, I would, when you go to a cocktail party, I never wanted to talk about it because I felt like it always took so much to explain to make it feel like something that I was really doing. Like I really was very proud of my work, but I was in marketing or I was the head of development or, it was just like, Until recently, having founded the For Farmers movement, I have to say that it's really interesting when you go in a room where no one is a farmer and people aren't thinking about farmers on a regular basis. They're just eating their dinner and not making any connections. And they get so excited and so inspired by the idea that I would be working with small farmers all across the country. So not to skirt the question, but I was in marketing for some 20-something years. And I did that on a grassroots level. I did that at a big corporate level. I worked in nonprofits. I even worked for the federal government when I was first out of college. And I think the thread for me through all of the work I've done, including For Farmers, including being the commissioner of the biggest youth soccer league in the nation, I feel like I was always really looking at making a difference and making an improvement in people's lives. And I think that kind of work is really meaningful to me. And it carries on through For Farmers.
Yep. Sounds like you have you've used your background for good and really made the most of that. I think it's very interesting. I think we all feel the same way, all of our listeners and everybody kind of in the farmers and farmers market space is when you ask people like, oh, you don't think about farming and farmers at all times, every time you eat anything. So that's so funny. That really resonated with me because I think we all feel the same when we start talking about what we do and who we work with. There's a lot of people that don't think about it. So I think that's more to the point of what you do is really supporting farmers. So tell us about the For Farmers movement, how that idea began and developed.
Well, it's really fun to talk with some podcasters because in 2019, I started a podcast called Talk Farm to Me, which I think is the greatest name ever. It has a really cute logo. It was really awesome. I got to talk to farmers all the time. It was really, honestly, quite literally an excuse to get a farmer off a tractor and, to the kitchen table to talk about what they do and to share their stories, which I think is so important because if we're talking about, the 98% of people who aren't farmers and aren't thinking about farmers, when they hear a farmer's story, just like the story of today is usually mind blowing, like what they had to do. And so that was really a luxury. And I mean, I'm just going to underscore this. I spend a lot of time thinking about how I can bring, for lack of a better word, consumers and farmers closer together, both in that headspace as well as in taking action. And, great podcast. I've been doing it for 4 years. And like I said, I just think the name is adorable and it's so much fun, to talk farm to me was really great. But I also realize the reality of that 98% is that if I want them to think about farmers, they're not going to listen to a podcast called Talk Farm to me because they're not interested. And so I really shifted my perspective. And my podcast is now called One Bite is Everything, really because anything on your plate is connected to the rest of the world in such an interesting way. It's connected to the world of seeds and pesticides. It's connected to politics. It's connected to farmers markets. It's connected to your community, your economy, your environment, and your personal health and your family's health. So, so now it's sort of the same story. I'm not always talking to farmers anymore. I'm talking to people with a perspective on, really what's on your plate and what's going on with it, and just lots of different perspectives. So, anyway, it all came out of Talk Farm to me. Everything sort of did. The podcast shifted. But before that, in listening to farmers' stories, I was struck by their invisibility, and their power to really create change on an environmental level, sequestering carbon on a health level, knitting communities together by existing, by hiring local people, by getting their kids to local schools and, fueling the, local mechanics business, all of that. So I was just really struck by the gap between how important they are and how invisible they are. And I don't know, I think maybe I've had a personal aha that everybody feels a little bit invisible in what they do. You know, I mean, you can think of other professions. Teachers are, can be invisible. Truckers who get our stuff across the country can be invisible. We don't think about, sort of that who is that person in your neighborhood, like from Sesame Street days, right? In the same way we should. And that to me was the beginning of the For Farmers movement. I felt like they're so important. They're so incredibly smart, have tremendous ingenuity and power to recycle everything in such a beautiful way. And so I started the For Farmers movement really to continue to share their stories, to dispel myths. And I had a dream that I would also, maybe 10 years down the road, offer grants to support farmers. And when I say grants, it is not a charitable effort at all, although I can accept charitable dollars in order to support farmers. It's more of an investment in small farmers and an acknowledgement of how important they are. And so in 2022, I did a 6-grant experiment. And it started by inviting the nation to nominate their farmers for a grant. And that's a very, very important part of the For Farmers movement. It's a way for consumers, again, to step out of their, unconsciousness into a space where they can say, hey, those carrots that I go and I can't get over how good they are. And those green leafy tops, and it just makes me feel good to have those, or, that cut of steak that I love. I love to prepare that for guests and to tell them about the farmer at the farmer's market that I've had these fun conversations with. He always gives me a recipe. So, I just really wanted that nominations process to be the first step in consumers and farmers getting closer together. And then farmers applying for grants. And, I do all kinds of creative fundraising to fill the grant coffers every year. And now we're at about 100 a year. So we've done 190 grants in 46 states. And yeah, I feel like we're just getting started.
How many nominations did you get that first year, Dana?
The first year, it was in the 300s.
Wow.
I'd have to look and see. It was a little bit, actually, I want to say that next spring it was around 300. I don't think that I really could count the first year because I ran it through Instagram. Try tracking that across a series of posts like comments, and it was just madness. I should have had my head examined, but since then, it's way more organized. And this past fall of 2024, we open our nominations every year in October on National Farmers Day. And this past year, we had 940. So we came a long way.
Yeah. Wow.
We get nominations from all 50 states every time, which is really important to me. It's just making sure that people are reaching out into their communities and making sure that every state is included because it is a national movement. And, that's how we build it.
Are nominations solicited all year, or is there a particular period where you take nominations?
Yeah, they're just for a couple of weeks. It opens October 12th, which is National Farmers Day, and it goes for a couple of weeks. And then we try to give farmers the heads up early that they start applying early in October. And then we do an evaluation period in November, and grants are announced on December 3rd, which is the first Wednesday after Thanksgiving.
Great.
It's quick. It's fast and furious.
Yeah, so the grants are pretty simple, right? We're not talking about an FMPP grant where there's 17 pages and a really complicated budget and a whole bunch of background, right, for the grants?
Farmers say three main reasons that they think our grants are, I think pretty awesome. That's usually the feedback that I get. One is the nominations process, mainly because that makes them feel seen and heard, right? Like in their local community, to have somebody you know or don't know, someone who knows you from social media or knows you from the farmers market nominates you. So that's one. The application process is really, really simple. I think some farmers fill it out in 15 minutes. Some people take a little bit longer because they want to craft their story, which is always helpful to the reader. But the only question that they probably can't answer immediately is the budget question, right? Like they have a project in mind. Okay, well, I'm going to build a chicken tractor. Let's cost out the lumber. Let me go online. Let me go to, my hardware store. Let me see what I have. Let me see what I need, right? So they get pretty specific in the budget section. What's the hardest part? They hit submit. The hardest part of the grant process is on our panel of reviewers. It is a gruesome project because we all, we read these incredible applications and they're all really worthy. I mean, a lot of for infrastructure or equipment or making up for a loss or some kind of repair or an innovation. We funded this year for the first time mental health support, so they can apply for anything that they really believe that they need, and making that case really when they speak from the heart about, why that's important, that really comes through for us. And then when they are approved for a grant, when they're selected, they basically fill out some information so that I can represent them properly on my website. So if you go to forfarmersmovement.com and at the top it says Meet the Farmers, you can see a profile on all of the farmers. It says a little brief summary of what kind of farm they have, the proper spelling of the farmers' names, which is so important. Usually there's someone applying and then there's a farmer in the wings, and we don't want to leave them out. And they provide us with a picture that in the way they would like to be represented. They talk about the grant, like what they got the grant for and what the impact is on their farm. It's really important for them to be able to represent themselves. I don't want to, sugarcoat it or, say it in the wrong way. And then they provide us with a 30-second video answer to a very simple question. Often, like, what's something that you would like a non-farmer to understand that they don't? Something like that. Or what's a hardship that you've had on your farm? What's the hardest thing for you? So they're all different kinds of questions. They're not crazy about doing the videos, but I feel a little bit like the farm mom. I'm like, well, it's going to be good for you. You can, this is how you market your vegetables on social media. But you need to get used to it. Um, and they get the money up front. So now listen, to be fair, it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not even 10,000. It's 500 and $1,000. You can get up to $3,000 if you're working collaboratively with other farmers. And we've had our first collaboration grants this past year. Three farmers are sharing a ram for genetics. Pretty cool project. And another two farmers are doing a consumer education program in their local communities, and they're kind of in two different communities. So, pretty important stuff, making sure our consumers are more connected. So yeah, they get their check up front. They don't have to prove to me where they spent it. Part of what 4Farmers does is we trust our farmers. And we know that they have a project they applied for. It's something they need. I did not tell them that they need to change the way they farm. We did not tell them anything, that they have to do. We don't want them to jump through any more hoops than they already have to.
That's great. And it's probably especially sensitive right now, given that so many of the large federal grants are based on doing the work first, putting out your own money, filing for reimbursement, and then a lot of those contracts were very abruptly terminated, and people who had spent money that are not getting it back, and that was tough. And just even before that part of it happened, because you had to put it out yourself first and then get reimbursed, that kind of limited awardees to people who had the money to float that initially. So you rule out a whole segment of folks.
Yeah, or they could take out a loan.
Sure.
And you're right. Not a lot of farmers, especially the kinds of farmers I'm working with, they're mostly small farmers, and
which are the ones we need to support, right? I mean, really.
Yes, they're the ones, if the wind changes, they could go under.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. I just like to say, I'm pretty disturbed by what happened with farmers and with the USDA. I think, every administration has its direction that they want to go, and they want to shift, and they want to change. And I respect that. But a promise is a promise, and a contract is a contract. And so we're here. We're going to continue to support farmers. I'm not involved in politics at all. I don't care. Sometimes I get comments like, "Oh, how could you support these?" I don't care what your politics are. I really don't. Mm-hmm. I don't want to know. Can you grow a carrot? And I think, part of our answer, the solution here is that we do, as a society, we need to stand up for our farmers, and we need to make sure that people are respecting and valuing the work that they do. And in early June, I started a campaign called One for Farmers. I'm kind of putting my money where my mouth is, because I have long said that I would rather have $1 from 1 million people than $1 million from one person. That's what the movement is about. It's the spirit of the 4Farmers movement, is for all of us to participate. And, that single dollar, people laugh at me a little bit like, oh, yeah, $1. I can't even think of anything $1 could buy, but I'm telling you that I have grants that are built on dollar contributions. And I've been doing it from the very beginning. We'll have a coffee day where give up the price of your coffee, and, it'll go to farmer grants. But this is another piece of the puzzle that small farmers really feel good about with regard to, what we're doing with 4Farmers. And that is, imagine that feeling of invisibility, and that you're out and you're growing eggplant or raising cattle, and you're up in the middle of the night, you're covering crops with, cover because an early frost is coming. There's calving in the middle of the night. There's a problem. You need to call in the cavalry. There's all these things that we don't see as consumers. And the idea that 500 people, each with $1 in hand, would be standing in that barn or in that field with that farmer is incredibly moving to them. It's not a corporate grant. It's not, you know, it's not a big philanthropic effort. It's not me saying, I'm smarter than you are and you should be a regenerative farmer. So I'm going to give you some money to convert. Like it's just, it's none of that. It is really about making sure that our farmers are seen and heard and also supported into the future. Now, you know, a lot of the farmers have said, you know what, it's not so much the money. It's really all of this. It's the people standing with us. And it's sort of the voice that we're lending and amplifying for our small farmers.
Mhm.
So, Dana, if you're evaluating this huge number of grants, and you have a review panel helping you, do you also have staff or anything? How do you make this lift? How do you find the time and to do what must take a lot of time to collect all those contributions and then to review the grants and then to sit down and write 900 checks and get them out? How are you making this work? Do you need contributions to keep the organization afloat?
So far, no, I haven't we don't, take any funds. I'm not a paid employee. I'm just one of those founder type people who's, making it happen. Um, I have volunteers in February who send postcards to farmers. We do something called Love for Farmers, which is really a gratitude program. And so we have a number of different layers of gratitude that go out to farmers. It also includes hey, I want to send my gratitude to this farmer. And we send postcards through volunteers. And so I have them. I have the review panel, which is, 12 to 15 people who roll up their sleeves and read every application. I am part of that process. From the very, very beginning, that panel has been farmers and non-farmers, which has been incredibly important. Farmers are the ones who really understand these applications and a little bit of what they're saying that maybe a layperson wouldn't understand as emphatically or loudly as needs to be understood, like what the hardship is that they're saying without maybe saying it. So that's been really important. But no, I had interns. I just finished a 6-week intern program, and they were really helpful. That was the first time I've had interns. We just had a little wrap up today. And, it's really, I think for anything that one does, it's really important to get outside eyes on it. And they're young. They're, rising sophomore and rising senior in college. And they had a lot to say. And I really listened very carefully to them because I think it's important if you're trying to bring non-farmers closer to farmers, you got to listen to the non-farmers the most. Like, what's interesting about this? What isn't clear? So that was great. But no paid staff. And I work hard. I work really hard.
Yeah, I bet. That sounds like there's a lot to do.
Mm-hmm.
How do you decide who gets an award and who doesn't? Obviously, you can't fund everybody.
I don't know. Come be on the review panel and you'll see how hard it is.
It sounds like a really, really tough thing to decide, especially when you're in the industry too. So you really, really understand that probably everyone who is applying is well deserving of funds, but just having to decide, a project that sounds a little more important or a little more needed is probably real tough.
Yeah, you know what? We have a rubric.
Mm-hmm.
We're pretty hard at the very beginning. Like if you didn't fill out the whole application, then gosh, kind of hard for us to go, take you all the way through. And there are 5 and 6 rounds. But I have to tell you the truth is that there's a little bit of magic in there because if you read and read and read and read, you start, you become very intimate with the farms. We look beyond the application sometimes. We're looking at websites, we're looking at Instagram if we can find more information to see if, we're just, I don't know, people like to check. They like to turn things over. And when it comes down to it, we could last round, we funded 105. We could have funded at least half of those at double the amount if we had the money. We could have funded another 25, without question. So, if you're lining them up and ranking them 1 to 105, did we get the ranking off a little bit? Maybe. and at the end, it was, 106 to 110. They probably should have gotten grants too. We just, at some point you have to cut it off. And I think we do an excellent job. And I have never been sorry that we funded someone. Never. Not once.
Sounds like you now have the experience to be a farmer's market manager. Doesn't this sound a little bit like going through? It sounds like going through farmer's market applications when you're talking about looking beyond. Sometimes you'll look at an application and think, I mean, does this person have a chance of success? I don't know. But then when you look at their website or you look at, they're doing a bang up job on social media and they're getting their message across and stuff. Oh, okay. They will likely be successful. They've got, what it takes to complete this process and get through.
Yeah. And looking at their story.
That's really interesting parallel. I hadn't thought about that. But much like a farmer's market, we don't want all beef producers.
Sure.
105 beef producers or flour farmers, right? We do want a balance. We do want a balance for sure. And I think, there are always those applications that stand out because they do. And some of them are, they answer the question in one sentence. And, I'm not advocating that. Farmers don't just give us one sentence, but we've been floored by some of those because it's, we had a fisherman off the coast of Oregon. He's a day boat fisherman. He's beholden to the same regulations that huge fishing vessels are, they have to follow the same regulations. And his NAV system went out and he put it on his credit card. And in order to pay off his credit card, you think he had the money to do that? Of course not. So he was, working his body on every big fishing boat that he could to pay off that. So he could get back out there. But he can't use the NAV system because he has to pay for it. So he's fishing on bigger vessels. Anyway, he had us at hello.
Yeah.
It just, is a hardship that was so clear. And then, people have incredible stories and things they want to do. They want to bring their consumers closer. So sometimes they've got a marketing idea and they can't fund it. They need a camera, to take pictures at their farm when they have visitors, sort of in the agritourism space, or like I said, some mental health support or, a lot of infrastructure. I mean, we've filled holes between barns where the tractor kept getting stuck. Things that make sense. They make total sense. A lot of fencing.
Yep.
All different kinds of things. Freezers for farm stores so they can, extend their offering, or refrigerators for eggs if they're starting layers. So things that make sense. These are real things that we're funding.
Right.
And what's interesting is I keep in touch with the farmers that we funded, obviously, and I want them to, spread the word and also share if they have something going on that we should know about or that's an interesting example. And a lot of what we fund is stuff that's still working. It's 3 years later, and I was just speaking with a farmer in the UP in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and we funded an irrigation system for their high tunnels. She's like, before that, my husband and I never saw each other because I was always moving the sprinkler. And it's not even that way. And this irrigation system is much more efficient, both for the farmers and also in terms of how the water is hitting their crops. Another farmer, we helped fund a three-prong fork for the front of their tractor. Previously, they had been lifting and moving daily their chicken tractors with the bucket on the front of their, and, they'd lift it a little bit and they'd stick a wagon under it and then they would pull and they would fight and cry and they were miserable and they were breaking down their chicken tractors. And they're like, it saved our farm. It saved our marriage. It saved everything. Because sometimes, you're a small farmer, you just do it the way you can, not the best way, because you just can't afford all the stuff.
Yeah, and keeping young farmers going. I mean, that is what's going to keep us fed ultimately, right?
Yeah.
So important. We know that some of the farmers who've been awarded grants participate in farmers markets. We haven't been able to really, you have an amazing amount of data on your website, but not necessarily broken down the way we can say, oh, how many, we are a farmers market podcast
We're
after all.
farmers market
So,
people.
how many of these people are getting grants to use to participate in farmers markets? And we do know that Esther's Acres got a grant. She's at the Minot Farmers Market in North Dakota. True North Farmstead is at the Downingtown Farmers Market in Pennsylvania that Christy runs outside of Philadelphia. Little Lighthouse Farm is at the Desert West Market in the Phoenix area over on the Peoria side. She's a wonderful, small, woman-owned farm. Do you remember anything notable in terms of people that have applied for the grant to start a farmers market business for their farm or use at the farmers market to enhance their display or setup or anything farmers market related?
Yeah, well, an early farm, it was a fourth generation farm, and this was more of a farm stand than it being at the farmer's market, but similarly wanted to be able to sell direct to consumer off the farm. And it was the fourth generation that stepped in and said, we want to do this. And they got laughed at by the senior farmers a little bit. And so they applied for a grant and they got it and they were able to start that. So it's a pretty big farm. So hopefully they're going to head to the farmers market tents in Texas. We funded, that's an expense, something that you must have. So we're very proud of that. Yeah. I mean, marketing expenses, they're really valid. Refrigerators and coolers, transportation, what do you call it? Like refrigerated trucks, putting a cool bot in a truck in order to be able to move materials. Farmers markets are, I mean, I could actually add that question.
Yeah, that'd be fun to know. Yeah.
And we do ask them, if I shared all the applications with you, we do ask them what they're selling. Where do they sell, whether it's online or from a farm stand or at the farmer's market. And the majority of them are in a farmer's market.
They're selling some way direct, I'm sure. And it's interesting that you say that because so many third and fourth generation farmers have essentially saved farms by moving to a model that includes at least some direct to consumer because the amount of income that the farmer keeps is so much higher when they're doing it that way. We had one of our very first intense conferences, we had Forrest Pritchard come talk to us who wrote Gaining Ground, and he had gone to college and to become a poet and had come back to the farm for a summer and realized that after the season got to its end, they had made $81 or something because the cost of selling wholesale, the distribution cost, the broker's cost, all that was just using up all their income. And it was him that took their meat to farmers markets in Virginia and essentially saved the family farm after all those generations. So we know how often that happens. And it's lovely to hear that, some of the things that you are funding help that. It's not, we tell people in our Vendor 101 class, it's not anywhere near what it costs to open a brick and mortar, but there are costs associated with getting started in farmers markets. There's usually permits you have to pay for, and there's those tents and tables and things. They do add up to a little bit of a chunk when you're first getting started. So it's good to know that you're out there.
Yeah, but they're taking home more of the revenue than they would if they're selling wholesale. So I think it's something like 15% if it ends up in the supermarket and a good 70% or higher at a farmer's market.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And getting them those tools that they can use to break into a farmer's market, or if they're at markets, just make their kind of display better, or if they have a tent that doesn't have a hole in it or a broken leg.
We're going to ask the juicing gents to apply for a grant to get tablecloths. What do you think?
Yes, I think we have some farmers in mind that could use a little
favorite farm vendors.
Yeah, send them my way.
Display could use a little.
Well, I
work.
think that farmers markets are super important to the For Farmers movement, and I mean, this is how I see it. Obviously, we've got farmers at the farmers market and we've got consumers at the farmers market. And I think it's so important to remind consumers that they need to make that effort. They need to get to the farmers market, that their consistent effort to shop at the farmers market can make or break a small farmer. And that's crucial. I put out a 39-page farmers market field guide. It's in its third year, and it's for farmers markets to use. It's free, to give to their consumers, to send out, to say, this is a great way, not only to use your farmers market better, but to be a little bit more conscious about what it means when you use your farmers market. You're getting your fresh eggs, you're getting your fresh meat and vegetables and flowers and all of that. but you're also really doing a lot more. You're having a big impact. And I think that if shoppers understand that, they're going to feel better about it, you know? So that's a really important part of farmers markets. And this year, for the first time, we had an event with the first farmers markets really meant to be a pilot. So I was in Minneapolis just in August at the end of National Farmers Market Week, walking a mile in a farmer's boots, which was our event. And the whole idea was for participants to take a moment and to actually have that empathy. That's the whole, the whole saying, right? Like, we're going to put on those farmer's boots and we're going to see how they live and what they do. And we had a ceremonial walk at the market. And then we paraded around, through their market, which is 3 really big, beautiful open air, permanently covered structures. And we got to talk to the farmers, and it was really fun. And to hear who had been there for a long time, and who was new, and, what everybody's doing. And afterward, we also had a pancake breakfast. They had music. So it was really an incredible community vibe. But the point was that we were there to do all of that, to build that empathy, but also registration fees went directly to farmer grants. And the idea here is, and just since you're in the farmers market space, I'm looking for another 9 or so farmers markets, so that next summer in August, around National Farmers Market Week, we would host this Walk a Mile in a Farmer's Boots event in 10 total markets. Minneapolis is so down, and they have nearby markets that want to participate as well. So there's a market 2 miles away. And so we're going to do a joint event with them, which is really cool. So it doesn't have to just be one market. But what happens is 80% of the dollars that we raise in the marketplace goes back to farmer grants. And the other 20% goes into the national pool for farmers grants. 100% of the money is going to farmers. And we were able to generate $6,000 in that market.
Oh, that's great.
For farmer grants. So it's just really important. This is a national movement, but it's not national if it's not local. And what I really want is for that, the For Farmers message to drill down into these local markets. So the other day I put up on Instagram, I was like, what farmers markets should we go to next? I mean, what a flood.
Oh, good.
So I can share those with you, but it was really fun. This one over here. Oh, you have to do these. This is a smaller one, but it's really got a great spirit. And so I think we're going to start a nominations process more officially, because we want a farmers market that's going to be enthusiastic about this, but also that, it kind of needs a champion, and they can use volunteers. So like, if I were nominating a farmers market, maybe I'm the volunteer who's going to go and help that market get organized. And I'm going to get my friends out of bed early on a Saturday, and we're going to walk a mile in a farmer's boots with a really cute hat.
Are you in?
Well, that's important. Yes,
I mean,
let's do
having
it.
the hat. You'd think she had you the hat, right?
I'll send you guys a hat. It's so cute.
Oh, cute. Yeah, we'd love to share that information too about how the farmers markets can, look at that info and maybe get involved in that and be one of the 9 that
right.
are doing that next year. That sounds really great.
Yeah.
It's nice to tie that into the markets as well. I like the idea that you have the guide too that folks can share with their consumers to help kind of bridge that gap between the people that are shopping at the market and then also the farmers that need funds for different things. This is like a really great message to share too, because I think when I talk to shoppers at my markets who really are there to support the farmers, they love supporting the farmers, and they just have a lot of questions. And I think in their mind, they think, okay, farmers need tractors and to pay the water bill. And that's like kind of what they think of as like a farmer's expense. And so it's really great to share these stories and say, these are all the things that they're using these grants for. This is how it benefits you, the consumer, because they can get some funds to do these projects or to fix these things or to pay back that credit card bill. Then you benefit in the end because they're still farming, they're still fishing, and you get to, be the beneficiary of that by eating their food. So just really tying that together.
It's all about them, meaning like it's about you, the consumer, right?
Mm-hmm.
These farmers are they're organizing their entire life to make something delicious for you.
Yeah.
So you are central to this story. And I think, when it comes down to it, and, whether somebody's giving $20,000 for a bunch of grants or $500 for one grant or just $1 to participate, to be a part of that one grant, it's all meaningful. It is all effective. And like I said, I've never seen a farmer, with a project that didn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. They know what they need. Where can you get this guide? Is it printed? Is it all online for the Farmers Market Guide?
Yeah, it's free. It's online, and I'll give you a link for your show notes. How's that?
That's perfect. That would be wonderful. I'm sure a lot of our listeners would love to get access to that and share it around.
Have you ever printed that in? It's a beautiful guide, but it's a lot of pages. Do you print it out, or is it all distributed online?
So, it's funny. I did print it. I would like to print it in a smaller format. I think it's really big to have, who walks around with an 8.5 by 11? So, yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, it's really
Just
lovely.
helpful. I'm always trying to get information out to shoppers about,
it goes
reasons,
well on
so.
your computer or your phone or your tablet or whatever. Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
So is there an ultimate goal beyond the grants for the Four Farmers movement? Is there something that I love the walk a mile in the farmer's boots. That's a good one. It sounds like you've got a lot of things going under there. What's the priority? What's the basis? What's next for the Four Farmers movement?
I think that I am standing, sort of squarely in between farmers and non-farmers, and I have a big crank, and I'm just trying to pull them closer and closer together because, again, we care about our health. We don't want our communities, the ones that we live in, or even if you don't live in a rural community, you don't want to drive into a rural community and see it failing. I think, for the most part, don't want our politics to be so divided. We want to be closer together as a nation, and we want to understand one another. I believe all of that to be true. We want our economy to be robust, and we don't want to be in the middle of a pandemic or something parallel to a pandemic and not be able to get food in our local communities, right? We don't want to have to rely on the fact that a shipping container came in from, Peru. We don't want to rely on that. I mean, it's nice if you want an avocado, but, we don't want to rely on that on a daily basis. We want to have that. And I believe all of those things to be true. And so, I'm going to continue this work to support small farmers to make sure that they're not slipping through the cracks. We are losing farmers left and right. We have the highest bankruptcy rate for farmers in the first 6 months of 2025 that we've had since 2020, when it was abysmal. And I am concerned that we're heading toward a major food crisis for all of these reasons. We've got, ICE is coming to farms, and, 70% of farm workers aren't showing up. This is going to hit us in the supermarket, in the farmer's market, right? This is just not, it's not okay. So I think, whether there's a crisis or just your average day-to-day farmers are struggling and they can't make it work anymore, I'm going to stand in that space until that's not a problem.
Amen. I think it's what we're all about here.
Yeah, we all need to be doing that, and we all need to be looking to people that are doing it well and joining forces and, making a bigger impact with that, so we don't find ourselves in a bad situation. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Bridget, you said something about, people think that farmers need to, pay an electric bill or have a tractor. Mm-hmm. Tractors are expensive. And I think that's the other piece of this, is that I think it's super important to make helping farmers easier. So nominate your farmer for a grant. I've had so many people say, I don't know a farmer. I'm like, I'm here. Give me your zip code. I'll introduce you to one. I will find you a farmer to know and love. Nominate them, donate $1, do your part, send them a thank you note in February. Come to the farmers markets and support your farmers by shopping with them on a regular basis. Make it a habit. Go with a friend. Take your kids. Do a treasure hunt. There's one in the farmers market field guide. So like all of that, like you don't have to stop what you're doing. You don't have to dedicate your life to farmers. You don't have to wake up and think, oh my God, my farmers are failing. You just have to do a
Yeah,
little
if we
bit.
all did a little bit, it would add up to a lot. It really would.
Just a little bit. And I think, that's what One for Farmers is. It's a million people, $1 each. And then we will fill the hole that the USDA left behind when they welched on those farmers.
Yeah. So I think we want to encourage all of our listeners who are in great spaces to know a farmer to nominate to pay attention. We'll keep reminding you. Coming up on October 12th, which is National Farmers Day, we are going to remind you to nominate one of your farmers. So if all of our farmers market managers and our farmers and our food makers who use farmers' ingredients to produce the things that they sell will remember to do that, we're going to flood Dana with farmer donation for farmer nominations.
Ready.
And let's flood her also with donations of whatever size you can afford.
Yep.
Thank you so much for being with us
Thank you so
today.
much for having me. It was really fun.
Thank you for the work you do, Dana. We really appreciate you and look forward to seeing what's next. So we'll keep in
Likewise.
touch. Thanks for being on Tent Talk.
Thanks for listening today. And big thanks to Square for helping farmers market participants and managers increase their income and reduce their stress, and for supporting Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. To sign up for easy credit card processing on-site at markets and simple invoicing back at your desk, just click the Square logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Thanks for listening to Tent Talk today. Please leave us a review on your podcast app or wherever you listen to Tent Talk. Let us and others know how you're enjoying the podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Tent Talk. Connect with fellow farmers market folks in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community, and follow us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros. Find online education and other resources at farmersmarketpros.com. Tent Talk is brought to you by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Tent Talk is hosted by Kat Fields White and Bridget Myers and produced by Leandra Hayes, with original music by David Mead. Tune in next week for another great episode.